Hello and welcome to Unit 2 Variables and Expressions. We're taking a look at the new section title of 2.3 Multiplying Terms with Exponents. The pizzazz pages are 59, 63, and 65. Please make sure you're putting your name and date on these as we go through. And we're going to take a look at some key vocabulary that we've taken from previous sessions. So, from the notes of 1.4 that we did on our exponent review, we have the word base. And this is the term that's being expanded. It can be a number, variable, or an expression. The next thing that we've got is the exponent, which is the same thing as the power. It's the amount of terms that are in the expanded form. And the expanded form is written out the long way, so using multiplication. And the exponential form is when we have the idea of a term with a base and an exponent. So that's what we mean by exponential term. So let's go ahead and take a look at some key concepts for multiplying terms with exponents. So the method for that takes a look, and we're going to first write each term in expanded form. And this step is going to eliminate all of the exponents. So again, our goal is to multiply terms with exponents. And an idea, just to give you what this might look like, I'll just give you a quick reference. If we had a situation where we were trying to multiply 3x squared times the term 10x, we would want to expand the term. So where we have that x squared, we want to expand that out. The next step that we're going to have is to group. Let's fix that. So to group coefficients and variables together. So step 2 is to group coefficients, which are the numbers that are multiplied to the variable, and the variables together. So once we've grouped those, then we're going to multiply the coefficients, and we'll get our new coefficient if we multiply the coefficients that we've grouped together. Step 4 is very similar in the sense that we're going to count the amount of each repeated variable. And we're going to identify then the new exponents for each variable. The 5th step is to write in exponential form, so using the base and the variable. And our last set is to write in alphabetical order. So we're going to arrange our variables in alphabetical order. Now, if I take a look at this situation here, when I had 3x squared times 10x, this is a situation when we're going to have the idea that I'm going to want to first group. So if I grouped these together after expanding, so the expansion would look like 3 times x and 10 times x. The grouping would then be taking place when I'm taking a look at I have a 3 and a 10 that are being multiplied together, and those are my coefficients. So there I'm going to then have this 3 times 10 in a separate spot. And then I have my variables that I can put together. So I have x times x and x here. So this would give me x, x, x. And when I take a look at that, then I'm going to go ahead and indicate what this would be if I simplified. So multiplying those coefficients, I would get 30. And taking a look at exponential form for the x's, I would get x to the power of 3 because there are 3 of them. So that's an idea of what this could look like. And let's go ahead and take some examples where we have some more room. This was just for you to take a look at. You did not need to write this down. So let's take a look at our first set of examples. So here we have example 1 completed out for us, and we have the original, so 3z squared times negative 5z. So that's our original problem. Then we're going to go ahead and expand it. So we have 3 times z and negative 5 times z. Grouping the 3 and the negative 5 in one parenthesis pair. We're going to then go ahead and identify that 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, and z times z is going to give us z to the third power. So that's our answer in exponential form. Since we don't have to worry about alphabetical order, we only have one variable, we're in good shape. Let's take a look at example number 2, which I have as m times m squared. And I'm going to go ahead and expand those out. Now, recognizing that each of these has a coefficient of 1. So if I take a look at that, then I have 1 times m and 1 times m times m. So grouping those together, because I have those 1's, these guys right here, I'm going to have 1 times 1. And then I'm going to take a look at my m's, and I have one m there and 2 m's there. So I should write in this next grouping 3 different m's multiplied together. So I'm going to get 1 times m to the third power, which is the same thing as m to the third power, since in algebra we often don't write the coefficient of 1. Let's take a look at our next set of examples. And please add in that we have 2.3 for our section title, multiplying terms with exponents. So in that section title, we're just making sure that we're organized. And again, 2.3, we're multiplying terms with exponents. And we've got some vocabulary here from our section of 2.1. So the idea of a term, so a simple expression with multiplication. A variable, which is a letter that represents unknown numbers. And the coefficient, so a number part of the expression that's being multiplied to the variable. Now, example number 3, let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to have negative 2xy times negative x squared. Now here I want to identify my coefficients first, just so I have an idea of what that is. If I have a chance to look at this, then I would notice that I have negative 2 and just a negative, which really is the same thing as a negative 1. So I can imagine that there's a negative 1 in front of that x squared term. Now I'm going to go ahead and expand out. So I have negative 2x times y and negative 1 times x in my expanded form. We're going to group our coefficients of negative 2 times negative 1, and then group our coefficients of x times x and y times y. Or rather, there's just one y in this situation. So making sure that I have all my terms. So I underlined and highlighted just so I don't get confused, because as you'll notice, it can be challenging to identify, did I answer all of my terms? Did I combine them and group them together? So here is this last y that I put right here. And now I can go ahead and multiply my coefficients, and I get negative 2 times negative 1 as a positive 2. And x times x can be simplified as x to the third power. And y can hang out all by itself. So we're multiplying all these together, and I'm using my idea of alphabetical order. And the next thing I'm going to do is take a look at some other examples where maybe I might have a fractional coefficient. So if I have a fractional coefficient, for example in number 4, I'm going to have 36a to the 4th times 1/4 a to the third power, or a cubed. I'm going to first expand and take 36 times a times a times a times a, making sure that I wrote out 4 a's on that first part, and 1/4 times a times a times a. Now be careful, we've got a lot of a's here. But first let's group our coefficients. So we want to put the 36 times 1/4 together, and then all of our a's together. And I have 4 a's on front. Whoa, let's slow down. I have 4 a's in the front and 3 a's in back. Let's make this a little faster. It looks like it's kind of having a glitch. So I have 4 a's in the front, which are there, and 3 a's in the back for the second term. So in total, I have 7 a's that are being multiplied together. So when we multiply 36 times 1/4, I'm going to end up with 9, because if I take 36 and divide by 4, I get 9. And I should have a to the 4th power, or to the 7th power, because I have 7 terms. So when I take a look at that, my answer of 9 times a to the 7th power is completely simplified. Now, when I take a look from there, we've got a couple of pieces that are heading our way. And again, I really want to emphasize the expansion and then the grouping, and then double checking that you made sure that you regrouped everything. So let's take a look at example 5 and 6. When we no longer have the same variable. So example 5 is where I have a times b times c multiplied by another term of a squared times b to the 4th times c. Now, when I take a look at this, I actually don't see any coefficients, which means there's imaginary 1s multiplied in the very front. So I can organize that by putting those up in front, and then organizing my a's, organizing my b's, and then my c's. I start that direction because it makes sense if I organize it alphabetically to start with. So I picked the first a out of the first term, and then a squared is the same thing as a times a. So I should get 3 a's. Similarly, I have 1b in my first term, and b to the 4th power is now b times b times b times b, lots of b's. And there should be 2 c's that are multiplied together, and I put those check marks up there just to make sure that I got all my terms. Now our next step, once we've taken to grouping them, is to organize them. So we've expanded and grouped kind of in that same method. So let's go ahead and take a look. And what would this look like in exponential form? Well, the 1 times 1 can actually be ignored since it's still 1. And we're going to go ahead and make a to the 3rd and b to the 5th and c squared. Now when I finish this off, that, like I said, that 1 can be erased. It can be ignored because it's understood that there is only one of these terms. Now we're going to do our last example of 2 times t to the 3rd times, looks like negative t, negative t squared, times 9st. Now let's go ahead and group our coefficients together. And I did this just to kind of organize. I guess the first thing that we probably should do is expand. But at this point in time, we're starting to really expand in our minds. So what that could look like for an expansion could look like 2 times t times t times t. And this one would look like negative 1 times t times t. And this would look like 9st. That would stay. So that would be the expanded form of this original problem. And then I can go ahead and organize my coefficients in one section, my t's in another, and my s's in another. So my coefficients are 2, -1, and 9. And then I'm going to go ahead and organize my s together, since I only have one of those. And then I'm going to organize my t terms together. So I have 3 t's for the t to the third power. And I have 2 t's multiplied together in the second term. And I only have 1 t in the third term. When I go ahead and take a look at these, I can then start to use my expanded form. And 2 times -1 times 9 can be simplified to give me -18. S can just drop down, and I'm going to have t to the power of 6, because I have 6 t's that are multiplied together. Now I have a couple try-on-your-owns, so please take a look at your try-on-your-own examples. So we are going to start off with 16w squared x times the quantity of 1/2 w x to the 5th power. Your second example is going to be 7x to the 3rd y as one term, multiplied by -2x to the 4th, and that multiplied by -3y. So again, your steps when you're organizing this as we go through, your first step, and this is just for you to remind yourself, when you're taking a look on that first one, is that first step is to expand. The second step, so step 2, is to organize and group. And the third step, really, when we're taking a look and kind of simplifying this down, so we expand it, then we group it, and then we write it in exponential form. And those are the very, very basic pieces. So in your section on these 2 problems, please follow those directions. If you want more detail, go to the very front, and there are 6 in order. Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.